Yo, hello, hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Yo, we're vibing. How are things hanging with both of you guys?
Yeah, real good, real good.
Good,
Can you
good.
see me on camera, or is my camera not on yet?
The camera's not on, but if it's being finicky, not a big deal. We can
Okay,
work with it.
cool. I think I've sorted it out.
You think you've sorted it out? Okay. Oh, yep, you have. Hold on a second. Let me just pop you out on the full screen. So, guys, we have both the brothers here, Oski and Barnyard. Technically, you guys have normal names, but that's the nicknames that we've dubbed for you guys on all the stuff. And really excited that you're here talking about Umbria. And for anyone that doesn't know anything about Umbria, do you want to give us kind of just a quick little backstory about what it is?
Yeah, sure thing. Umbria is a cross-chain bridging platform, first and foremost. So it's a way that you can get your assets from one chain to another. Right now, we support a bridge between Ethereum and Polygon and Ethereum, like both ways. It's the cheapest and it's the fastest bridge currently available. And we're going to be introducing Binance Smart Chain very, very soon. So we're going to be fleshing all of that stuff out over the next about a year, adding Solana and Phantom and Avalanche. But right now, it's just ETH and Polygon and Binance Smart Chain in the next week or so.
So that's super interesting that you guys are going for the Binance Smart Chain kind of like ecosystem. Because for me, as I mentioned just like a second ago, that I'm not like, for me in Ontario, using Binance is somewhat kind of like difficult, but I have used the Binance Smart Chain before. And there's obviously ways to get around to different kind of regulations based off of where you are. But for you guys, with deciding to go to some of these different blockchains and having that bridge, why did you think that Binance Smart Chain is something that you want to integrate with sooner rather than later?
Yeah, so for us, our project is first and foremost community driven. And so we did a poll and basically asked all of our community members, where do you need to bridge your assets the most? And what's the most difficult for the blockchains that you want to move your assets from Ethereum to? And it was almost completely overwhelmingly Binance Smart Chain to begin with. And then Solana and Avalanche were the next big ones that people wanted to bridge. And so we thought, for us, we want our project to be as usable to people as possible, and also as we want it to be something that people really do need in the system. And so we think that asking our community and getting them to vote, and then going from that decision, that's the best way forward for the Umbria network.
Yeah, basically with Binance Smart Chain, a lot of NFT projects are launching on there, a lot of DeFi projects are launching on there, and there isn't any really good way to get your assets from, say, Polygon or from Ethereum to Binance Smart Chain. And all of the current solutions are really expensive and really slow. And so we're basically just trying to solve that problem of being able to fluidly get your assets anywhere you need them to be right now, quickly as possible and cheaply as possible.
Well, that's one thing that I think a lot of people are staying away from certain other chains and stuff due to the fact that, you know, it's potentially a little bit too complex, or in the sake of at least Polygon, using the, you know, Polygon or Matic like mainnet bridge thing. It's awful. It takes forever. You kind of have like a panic attack if you have no idea what's going on with kind of like what's going on. But you guys have created this bridge, and kind of like explain this a little bit more, I guess. Is it something where you need to have, you know, Umbria token to be able to use it? Do you need like what's kind of the extra details we need to know about it?
So basically, you just need the asset that you would use to do a normal transaction on that network. So let's say you're going to go from Ethereum to Polygon. You need a little bit of Ethereum to pay for the transaction fee. If you're going from Polygon to Ethereum, you need a little bit of Matic to pay for the transaction fee. But as far as you know, any other complicated stuff is concerned, that's pretty much all you need to know. So if you want to move USDT from Ethereum to Polygon, you need to have your USDT and a little bit of ETH to pay for the transaction.
Okay. And I mean, like, I've used it and I think it's super cool. And now I know there was a thing before about you guys doing something with Zedrun. Are you trying to integrate with different projects? Because also we know that Sandbox is, you know, moving to Polygon as well, and potentially that could end up being a partnership. Where do you guys kind of see yourself fitting in as we're going along here?
Yeah, well, we've actually just built a widget for NFT developers and DeFi developers to integrate the Narni bridge into their website. So at the moment and previously, if a company wanted their community to use our system, they would have to link our website to their community. But now that we have a widget which will allow people to basically integrate us into their website, it's going to be much easier for NFT developers and DeFi developers to put our system right into their system and really integrate us very strongly into their system. So it's very exciting to see that's starting to happen now. Zedrun have been a very big supporter of us from day one, which we've been very appreciative of. But now we're really starting to see adoption of a lot more NFT platforms and DeFi platforms coming into the Umbria ecosystem, which is great to see.
Basically, the problem we're trying to solve with the widget is that the users don't necessarily need to know or want to know the underlying bridging technology that they're using. They just care about one thing. They care about getting their assets to where they need to be as cheaply and quickly as possible. So we don't need to tell them that they're using the Umbria bridge as long as the Umbria bridge is being effective and solving their problems. So with this widget, any project can kind of brand that widget that we've made in any way that they like and fit it into their ecosystem so that their users don't know and don't care that they're using our bridging platform. It kind of feels like the user experience of Zrun or of whatever NFT project might want to integrate us. Because right now, like one of the main problems with the crypto space in general, but also NFTs, is that a lot of people entering the space are not up to speed on all the technical stuff. And if we can extract away all of the confusing technical stuff that they don't necessarily need to know about, that's going to make the onboarding a lot more, smooth.
Well, I mean, you guys have like $3 million in TVL on the bridge here, and you guys are doing things, 10 times faster, bigger, stronger, the whole, different phrasing you can use for that one. But like, how come it's you guys in a way, right? Like, how do you do that? Has Matic reached out to you and said, hey, like, we want to do stuff with you? How have you kind of like found the need and the niche for this? Because I think when you guys originally launched for Umbria, you had kind of like different ideas, but you've worked to create something that's needed for many people.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go again, Barnes. I'm jumping in.
So basically, when we first started the Umbria ecosystem, we were developing not just the bridge, but a whole bunch of DeFi applications like an exchange and a farm and all that kind of thing. And we actually were accepted and won a grant from Polygon in the beginning, where they helped us fund the initial development of our ecosystem. And then from there, we just kind of, looked at our community and stayed close with them and saw what was needed in the DeFi space, particularly between Polygon and Ethereum. And we realized quite quickly that the bridging solutions out there really aren't up to scratch and are really kind of the bottleneck that's holding all this DeFi stuff back. And so that's where we've really focused our efforts. And thankfully, it's been really positive, and it's had a lot of great success so far.
Yeah, I would say that one of the most important problems to solve in DeFi in particular right now, but in cryptocurrency in general, is the problem of not being able to move your assets to different places when you need them. And so you might spot an arbitrage opportunity on one exchange on one network, and a particular token might be cheaper on that network than this other network. And if you're able to move your assets between those networks really quickly, you might be able to get a cheap deal here for a token and sell it over here for a profit. But until now, there haven't been any bridging solutions really that were practical enough to use financially so that you could take advantage of those arbitrage opportunities. If you're going to use the Polygon bridge, the official Polygon bridge, it could cost you $300 just to move from one chain to another, and maybe $300 again backwards. And so, $600 really like makes a lot of these small arbitrage opportunities not practical anymore. So with our bridge, I think a lot of people have been using the bridge to kind of float around between Ethereum and Polygon and spot little, discrepancies in the price between these different exchanges and capitalize on that. But as we expand this to more networks and more assets, those opportunities are going to become more available to more people more often as well.
I'm curious on your guys' kind of envisionment of the landscape here, because we've had this talk multiple times when you've come on, and it's like, hey, ETH gas fees are really, really bad. And it's a very common trend, and people are starting to build much more on Polygon. Obviously, we see Zrun talking about Sandbox, but things like Chicken Derby that are on the horizon that a lot of people were hyped up about. But at the same time, we have people saying, oh, like the fees are so cheap, so we have these garbage projects that are coming out. And I think that different things on Polygon are starting to have a kind of negative connotation in a lot of people's minds. So how do you guys kind of see the Ethereum development going, Polygon evolution, etc.? And Oski, we'll start with you and then go with Barnyard.
Well, people have been talking about scaling Ethereum since, when I joined the blockchain space back in 2016. They were talking about things like sharding and all of the great things that were going to happen to Ethereum to make it way more scalable. We haven't seen a great deal of actual implementation and actual scalability being implemented into Ethereum. So I'm kind of pessimistic about what's going to happen with ETH 2.0. It might happen and that would be really great. But as far as like seeing it on the horizon, I don't personally see it coming anytime soon. I also expect that the Ethereum gas fees are going to get worse as more people adopt cryptocurrency, and we've seen a steady trend of that increasing and getting worse and worse and worse. So I think things like Polygon, even though they do have their downsides with how available they are for scammers to start projects on the cheap, I think people are pretty smart and they're wising up to that kind of thing. And as long as as long as we have nice communities around us that can kind of point us in the right direction, like we have on Discord and things like that, I think like the downside of having scammy projects is outweighed by just how much good technology is coming out and good innovations coming out.
And Barney, sorry, I know that you dropped off there. I can kind of like re-ask the question if you'd like, just to give your thoughts on it, if you haven't heard. But if you haven't,
sure.
Okay, so for kind of the space, we're seeing that there's, you know, the problem of ETH gas fees, but then there's also the negative correlation with Polygon. And I mean, I think it got really expedited when OpenSea said we are going to hide every Polygon drop, which just said, hey, this is all garbage no matter what. When that, I understand the frustration of getting those different drops and going through and hiding them, but I think it really did have a major effect on the perception of Polygon. So I'm curious your take on, you know, with ETH gas fees and ETH 2.0 on the horizon and people are saying, hey, this is all going to get fixed. Do you think that's the case? Or do you think like people really should be looking at these layer twos like Polygon?
Yeah, well, I think that Polygon has really just exploded so quickly that things that are negative are also going to kind of explode around it as well. Because, you know, Ethereum really took 3 years maybe before it became, you know, a really big sensation. And Polygon has kind of done the same thing in, you know, 12 to 18 months. And so with that comes, you know, a lot of chaos and a lot of things, you know, potentially going wrong. Things like, you know, their official RPCs not being particularly reliable and all that kind of thing. But if you look at the other side of it, I think that Polygon has really done some amazing things a lot quicker than some of its competitors. And so I think in the next, you know, 5 years or so, Polygon is going to, you know, just go from strength to strength. And as far as ETH 2.0 is concerned, I'm still not 100% convinced personally that things like the sharding, optimistic rollups, and even the change to proof of stake are going to be solutions to the gas fee problem that we're seeing on Ethereum right now. That still remains to be seen, and I might be, you know, proven completely wrong in 12 to 18 months. But Polygon, it feels like to me, is already solving a lot of the problems that ETH 2.0 is meant to solve. You know, when it does come out, and it still doesn't really have a solid deadline of when it is meant to be officially released. So I'm still definitely team Polygon at the moment, but at the same time, you know, Ethereum has its place. It is the original OG smart contract blockchain, and you know it's the best one at the moment in a lot of ways. And so I think they're both going to be here to stay for a long time.
I'm curious what you guys have to say about like from like a development side, which chains you kind of like working with the best. Is it Polygon? Is what you've seen with Binance Smart Chain something that you really kind of like enjoy? I know you're doing stuff with like Avagachi as well. You've talked about Avalanche a little bit. From your side of things, who do you kind of like really like and think is going to be a huge player in this space?
From a development perspective, all of these chains kind of operate in a very similar way. If you write a smart contract and deploy it on Ethereum, you can deploy that same smart contract on Binance Smart Chain or on Polygon. And they're what's called EVM compatible, which means they just have the same basic underlying architecture. And there are some differences with how validation happens, but as far as like their smart contract architecture, it's all exactly the same. So I would say the attribute that would cause one to be a favorite for me is basically the cost of deployment and sort of how reliably you can build applications around it. And so with Binance Smart Chain and Polygon, they're both very cheap. Polygon is way cheaper, even though they're both very cheap. Polygon is it's like basically free. But the problem with Polygon is that it has problems with connectivity. So if you're connecting to a Polygon node with your application, it can be kind of intermittently unreliable and cause connectivity problems, and that can be like not so great for user experience. And with Binance Smart Chain, from the stuff I've developed on Binance Smart Chain, I haven't found any issues like that. It seems to be a lot more reliable, but it is a little bit more expensive. So that's sort of the trade-off. And of course, like if you compare Binance Smart Chain to Polygon, they don't quite have the same reputation, and they're not as trusted as Ethereum, like we just spoke about. And so those are kind of like each one has their own pros and cons, and that's kind of the landscape, I would say.
Yeah, and for me, I would say Polygon is my favorite purely because it has a really quick block time. I think it's 2 seconds compared to Ethereum, which is 15 seconds. So when you're deploying code, it is quicker to actually get your contracts onto the blockchain for testing and that kind of thing. But apart from that, yeah, they're all very similar, as Oscar says. But I also found that the Polygon blockchain does have a really good community of developers and a lot of really helpful people in their Discord as well, and that's always nice because obviously all this stuff is really new and it's very easy to get stuck in all of this new technology. And so having a big community like Polygon on Discord, it's really nice to code with those guys.
So I'm kind of not in the loop too much, but I thought I read something where Polygon is really trying to target developers and development like within India. And I think there's different ones that are targeting different sectors of the world. And I'm curious if you guys have any kind of like insight on that, or you think if you have any thoughts on kind of how that'll play out in the long term.
Yeah, well, I think most of the guys at Polygon are Indian. I know that Hamza, who's one of the main guys there, is Indian, and they have their base in Mumbai, I think, as well. And so I guess just geographically, it's probably easy for them to kind of spread wings in that sort of area. But in terms of development community of Polygon, I mean, it's really thriving at the moment. There's a lot of projects being built on Polygon, and for good reason, because in my opinion, it is the best EVM blockchain at the moment, and also probably one of the most well adopted as well. And because there is such a good community of developers available on Telegram and on Discord as well, it just seems to be the best place for people to develop. And there's always been a big development community in India. Web development, mobile app development is huge there. So I guess you're always going to see a lot of developers coming out of that space for crypto as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like when you think about the top countries for development, India definitely comes to mind. Like India and Russia, the two like greatest countries for software development. And so I think they're not going to struggle to find a lot of really good, talented programmers there.
Also, Devler from a point a minute ago, higher fees on a chain can weed out corrupt projects and development. Not to say that low effort corrupt cannot be deployed or successful on a high fee chain like mainnet Ethereum. And McRussell's replying to that, it makes it more expensive to develop and more expensive for users to interact with too. There is quite a lot of NFT stuff that simply wouldn't be feasible on more expensive chains. And I think like within the space for NFTs, I think like if we didn't have the higher gas fees, the entire landscape would look a lot different. And I mean, we're having the problem where, you are going to have that, like 1% of projects that can do good and people are fine to pay, $100, $150 in gas fees just because of the worth of those NFTs, where smaller projects, again, are suffering quite heavily. But to kind of like relay back over here to the Umbria bridge, I know for me, I actually have some of my stuff in the pool to earn. And so if you guys are able to give kind of a quick little rundown, because you are able to pull different assets for the Ethereum network. You have ETH, Avagache, Umbria, Tether, USD, Polygon, and Wrapped Bitcoin, which I thought is a very interesting cluster of crypto. So give us the rundown about why these ones are on the bridge and kind of how the pull and earn ultimately works.
Sure. So basically, the decision-making process for us to add assets basically just boils down to what assets do the community need to bridge and where do they need to bridge them to. And so if there's an asset that the community is kind of demanding, we'll add that to the bridge. And then as the volume happens and people are bridging that asset, the people who are providing liquidity to the bridge earn fees for doing so. And so our most popular bridge right now is Ethereum, from Ethereum to Polygon. And so people staking Ethereum have had up to like 30% APY with no impermanent loss, which is crazy high for Ethereum. And so, yeah, without this decision-making process, as soon as the community says, we want this asset added to the bridge, and here's why, if it's convincing and we feel like the community is actually going to use that asset on the bridge, then there's a way for us to provide really high APYs to our community for people who want to stake their assets and earn interest on them. And so it's kind of a virtuous circle as long as we make sure we add assets that are actually going to be used on networks that are actually going to be used. And so Ethereum has been a really good one for that because of all the NFT drops. People need to get Ethereum to Polygon to buy NFTs. But also things like USDT, USDC are used pretty widely in the DeFi space. So we added those as well.
Yeah, and this is why it's such an exciting time for Binance Smart Chain to be going live on our bridge. Because when you provide an asset, let's say Ethereum, into our bridge, and people bridge Ethereum from one blockchain to another, as a provider, you earn interest on the liquidity of the Ethereum that you staked. But if you provide Umbria into the system, you actually get a percentage of any token that's bridged from any of the bridges. So let's say I added Umbria into the system, and then somebody bridged Ethereum from Ethereum to Polygon, I actually get a percentage of the fee as an Umbria staker of that Ethereum that bridged over. But the thing is, now that we're adding Binance Smart Chain, there's going to be a whole bunch of other tokens that people can bridge from Ethereum to Binance Smart Chain, which means that a whole bunch more fees are going to be generated for the people that are providing Umbria into the system. So right now we have, I think, about 35% APY on Umbria staking in the bridge, paid in those native assets. But once we add Binance Smart Chain, that could double or triple, or who knows, depending on how much throughput we have on our Ethereum to Binance Smart Chain bridge. And we think that the Ethereum to Binance Smart Chain bridge is going to be even more popular than our Ethereum to Polygon bridge, just from the amount of hype we've generated from this announcement, and also how many people are begging us to release this as soon as possible. So it's super exciting for us as developers to see it all kind of coming together.
Yeah, and Umbria holders have seen some pretty nice gains from staking Umbria in our system. We launched the bridge about 3 months ago, like 3 to 4 months ago. And since then, the price of Umbria has gone from 40 cents to $1.60. And I think that's a function of the fact that people have been staking their Umbria and getting high APYs, which is providing like a positive pressure on the price. But when we add Binance Smart Chain, that's going to introduce a whole bunch more volume to our bridge, which in my opinion will raise the APY of staking Umbria way more, which should provide even more positive pressure on the Umbria price.
Yeah, an interesting comment here from Buffalo Space. I love how everyone craps on ETH for the fees. Just wait until these other chains start getting real traffic and the gas fees are baked into the price. No one is complaining that they're still making a killing on flipping on Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain, the fork of Ethereum without the updates and decentralization. Good luck. So what do you guys kind of think for like the NFT kind of like landscape and everything and for these different chains, right? Because it does kind of ultimately come down to the traffic that they're able to handle. What's your guys' take on the kind of like NFT landscape, and then we'll jump back to talking a little bit about the bridge, but just wanting to address Buffalo's question here, or statement, sorry.
Yeah, do you want to address that, Brian, or shall I?
Oh, sure, I can address it if you like. Okay. Yeah, well, I think that's definitely right, and I think we've seen about a 30 times increase in Polygon's transaction price pretty recently, because they implemented a new change to try to stop all of those scam tokens being distributed to every single user on the network. And so I think absolutely, as the adoption of these blockchains increases, the price of transacting on them will increase. But I think that compared to Ethereum, it's not going to be anywhere near as bad. I don't think we'll ever see a $100 transaction fee on Polygon or something like that, purely because of the way that it's been implemented with the idea in mind that they need to be cheap and quick. And so I'm not personally worried about either Binance Smart Chain or Polygon getting super crazy expensive like Ethereum has, but I think definitely it is going to increase in the future.
Any thoughts, Oski?
Yeah, I think like it doesn't really matter which chain we use as long as we can get liquidity into that network. And so let's say Polygon, worst case scenario, becomes unusable just like Ethereum because the amount of network congestion causes the network to be unusable. I don't think that will happen, but maybe like let's just imagine for a moment it does. There would be no stopping someone coming in and making a layer 3 solution on top of Polygon. As long as there's an available bridge to get assets from one to the other, I don't think the user actually has to care as long as they can use whatever's happening. So I think the push over the next year or two for a lot of these different systems is to make the actual underlying technology not that obvious to the user and just give them like a good user experience instead, because we can always keep adding layers and layers and layers to increase the throughput and increase the amount of volume that it can handle and also reduce the price. So I don't think it really matters if Polygon becomes more congested over time.
So yeah, it's just like the internet back in 1990 when you had to plug in your dial-up connection from your phone line into the computer and listen to the beep boop noises for 30 seconds and then configure what's going on in your browser and all that kind of thing. Whereas these days, all you have to do is plug in your router and it all does everything for you. And so I think we're seeing that now with crypto. We're still kind of like in the late 80s, early 90s of the internet when it comes to all this stuff. And so as all this stuff gets fleshed out and people start building better technology that makes more sense to laymen, we're going to see all of that stuff kind of become more easy for the user.
It's weird to think like how early we are in the space, and I think that word's thrown around a whole lot, but really based off of different things we've run into, it kind of like just highlights that. So for the bridge itself, just showing you guys, at least from my perspective, so I have like just under 2,000 Umbria staked, and you can actually click here and it says click to see your earnings history, and so far I've earned like 2.5 Umbria, but also McRussell's was saying that there's like other assets that I get for pooling the Umbria. So I just want to clarify, is that correct? And how do I see what those ones are? Or is that only something that you would notice once you kind of like unstake your Umbria on the pool?
Well, there's a history section for each asset, which gives you some information about when you received some fees. And we recently changed our payment structure from being every 5 minutes to, I think, Barney, is it every 12 hours that we pay out now?
24 hours.
Every 24 hours, yeah. And so it'll just be like larger chunks getting paid out. But you'll see in the history section that there's like a history in each different asset section, if that makes sense, in the pool page.
I'm just kind of looking because for me it shows like I can see the click your earnings for the history, but then it doesn't show like any other ones. But this is just for the Ethereum side, not the other one.
Yeah, exactly. So like if you're on the Ethereum side right now,
oh, I just figured it out. Never mind. Okay, so McRuss, sorry, not to cut you off, but so apparently if I go through and I click the other ones, it'll show, and so I have like $1.18 in USDC for Polygon. I have like 1.1 Matic for Wrap Bitcoin. I have like 0.0000417. That's okay. That's super cool. All right, I didn't realize that. I learned something new today.
Yeah, and as we add Binance Smart Chain and Solana and Phantom and Avalanche over the next few months, the amount of fees that you generate is all going to be contingent on how much volume are on each of those networks. So we should see like a massive increase in APY, even though the APY for a no impermanent loss system is already pretty high, or really high. I think it's going to just go to the moon when we start adding even more chains to this.
Yeah, but the beautiful thing as well is that we don't even have 0.1% of the volume of the official Polygon bridge, even though we are 10 times faster and 10 times cheaper. And that's just the product of people not really knowing about us yet because the project is so new. And so this is really just scratching the surface of what's possible with cross-chain bridging and this whole new way of earning fees on your liquidity by bridging assets is, a novel idea that has really just started to become a real life thing in the real world. And so we think that this is really just the beginning for Umbria. And once we start adding more chains and the word really starts getting out there, we're just going to see a parabolic increase in the amount of throughput this bridge is going to have. Because if you look at Etherscan and go to the bridge address, you can actually see in the transaction analytics section basically an exponential curve of people using our bridge. And so right now is a really exciting time for Umbria, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is notable about our project and our development is that we haven't put any budget into marketing really at all. We're just a couple of developers, and we've been slowly increasing the size of our team, but we haven't really put any effort into marketing yet. We've just been putting all of our focus into developing a really good, solid, stable system that people can actually use and is actually more effective. And now that we have that, we're really at a critical point of this project, I think, and it's only up from here. But we just have to make sure we don't get hacked, basically, which is our major focus at the moment.
And how does that work, I guess, for security, just for conversation's sake? And then I have one other question about the pool. Like before crypto security and stuff, I don't know if you guys have any kind of tips for users in general. And then I guess like from your perspective, what you guys need to be aware of.
Yeah, so security is always going to be a challenge for any project. But the thing is, you just have to take it incredibly seriously and make security your number one priority. So Barnard and I are really interested in security, cryptography, and that's how we kind of got into the cryptocurrency space. But we're constantly auditing our system. We're having an audit very soon. We're paying for the audit that we're about to have on Monday. So there's another audit coming in. We've already been audited by ADVFN. And so we're just making sure that everything is super, super tight. But security is always going to be one of those challenges. And as the project scales up and gets bigger, it's going to become more of a target. And you see lots of projects are getting hacked all the time, left, right, and center. And I think that's partly to do with the fact that once you release a smart contract application, it's very difficult to upgrade it. And sometimes you can't upgrade it at all, which is one of the major reasons why our system doesn't actually use any smart contracts. So it's maintainable, it's upgradable, it's scalable. It's all of those things that a decentralized application can struggle with sometimes. But from a user perspective, the best way to stay secure is to have a cold wallet and don't take out all of your funds into your hot wallet and start clicking around and answering emails and going to new websites and going to lots of different projects. Because there are some pretty sophisticated attacks out there. There are people, as you've probably seen in the Discord, trying to scam you every single day. And so I would say this is probably like the golden era for hacking. I don't think there's ever been so many high-profile hacking groups as there are right now in the crypto space. And so as a user, you have to be really careful and keep your computer really clean. And if there's crypto on there, you have to be really careful and thoughtful about what websites you're visiting and what PDFs you're downloading and things like that.
Yeah, and I would just say further than that, if you have any sizable amount of cryptocurrency, you really do need to have all of that, or most of it at least, somewhere separate on a different device in a different location, so that if your main wallet that you're connecting to websites does get compromised, you don't lose everything. Because it is just so easy to accidentally, click the wrong button somewhere and get completely wiped out. And once you're wiped out, that's kind of it. There's no repercussions like there would be from getting your identity stolen or something like that. And so anything that you think you're doing enough of right now, up that by 10x, and then you're probably doing the bare minimum. But beyond that, it's just it's a matter of being hyper vigilant, because at the moment it is, like Oscar said, really easy to get hacked, and it is a golden age of hacking right now for sure.
I think when you're talking about like easy things that you can kind of like fall for, can you give like some basic examples of things that you guys have seen as hacks that might just be kind of obvious for some, but like just a kind of realization of like a, hey, heads up?
Yeah, sure. So some of them to be very careful of is opening links in your email that look like they might be from exchanges but aren't. Also, I saw some Google adverts that were fake sushi swap. And so you click on this fake sushi swap on Google, and it asks you to put in your private key to connect to the fake sushi swap, and then they steal all your funds. So even links on Google can't be trusted. You have to make sure to always double check links when you're on a website to make sure it's the official link. Especially for NFT drops as well, you'll get a lot of Discord messages from people pretending to be an official, community member, community moderator, saying go to this link and purchase the NFT. The NFT drop is now live, and it'll be a scam website just there to steal your crypto. So the best thing you can do is always double check where you're sending your crypto. Always double check the URLs that you're connecting your wallet to, and also do your due diligence when it comes to finding new projects to make sure that they're not a scam project.
The worst one, in my opinion, is the approve function. And so if you go to SushiSwap and you want to do a swap, you have to approve the SushiSwap contracts to be able to move your crypto for you. And that's kind of how the contract structure works. And you can trust SushiSwap to do that because you can read their contract and everything's transparent and everything, is verifiable. If you know how to code, everyone's had a look at it and everyone agrees that that's okay. But if you hit the approve function for just any contract, you can approve that contract to take all of your funds. And so you need to be really careful which applications you're approving your funds with. And so I wouldn't just sort of willy-nilly hit approve in any new project that you might see or you might want to get involved with, because the approve function, that's the most dangerous one for sure.
And that's something that actually happened with the Pixel Vault. If you guys happen to know, the thing that G-Funk's creating with the Meta Hero universe, they had their Punk's comic, and you had the ability to burn that Genesis NFT for a Moondao token, which is a part of kind of like their next big thing. And it was a very limited quantity, but for them to try to prevent gas wars and whatnot, they had the ability to pre-approve that burn. And I guess there was a hacker in France that was able to figure out how to activate those burns, went through, they ended up selling, taking WETH offers on them, going to buy mint passes, redeeming all of the mint passes, and it kind of like really messed up their ecosystem. So for you guys, like when you're looking at different projects or whatever, like, do you think that many of them are getting kind of like audited at all? Do you think that everyone's doing stuff in house, or how do you think, how safe is the NFT landscape right now?
Super, super unsafe, completely. Yeah. And the thing is, you can get someone to audit your code, but there's no guarantee that they even know what they're looking at in a lot of cases, unless you're going with, a really reputable audit company like Certic or something like that. And so it's just so easy with smart contracts to make one tiny bug and then it's all over. Because in the normal development environment, you might implement something, someone will find a critical error, you can go and patch it, and then it's no longer a problem. But with smart contracts, it's not that easy because these contracts are immutable in a lot of cases. And so it's just so much more easy to get hacked, because as soon as a vulnerability is found, it's all over. And not only that, all this code is open source. Everyone can see the code as well. It's not like a black box where someone who's trying to hack you can't even see what code they're running. And so it's just infinitely easier to get into trouble when deploying smart contracts, especially when there's so much at stake, tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars at a time.
It's pretty the hacks that do happen, especially on DEXs and things like that. They happen because the contract code that runs the DEXs is publicly available. People take that code, they set up their own little development environment with that code, and then penetration test it from every angle. And they go, oh, here's a hole. And a lot of the time with these hacks, it's just someone who has looked at this code from every single angle, realizes a vulnerability, and then exploited that vulnerability.
Interesting. Okay, so
But a weird existential question about contract hacking is that if you're able to exploit a vulnerability in a contract, is that really hacking? Because you're just getting the contract to do something that it can do that's written into the code. Even though it might be an unintended consequences, there are kind of like legal existential gray areas and questions that are raised there. Like if you make Compound send you all of their funds, it was part of the contract, even though they didn't necessarily intend to put that into the contract. It's there in the immutable, decentralized contract, and so
you followed the contract 100%.
To what extent things like that are even illegal at the end of the day.
It's wild hearing you guys. I feel like it's a whole other side of things that like we don't even realize are happening a lot of the times in some of this stuff. And to kind of go back to the bridge, because one thing that happens with a lot of these different cryptocurrencies is the fact that you can provide liquidity, right? And you guys have this where you don't have impermanent loss. And I don't know if you're comfortable talking about like what impermanent loss is first, and then how you guys are doing the way that you're doing a pool and earn without having any impermanent loss.
Sure. Impermanent loss is a bit of a complicated concept, but basically what it means is if you add assets to a decentralized exchange like Uniswap or like SushiSwap, you have to add a pair of assets. You can't just add one at once. And so when you add a pair of assets and the price of one of them goes up, you only get half of the upside, and that's called impermanent loss. But if you add one asset to the Umbria pool, you only have to do one at once. So when the price of, like, let's say Ethereum goes up and you're staking Ethereum, you get all of that upside.
Yeah, and the reason that you lose half the upside in a DEX where you're adding a pair is because when you add a pair, that pair that's in the system is a ratio between the two tokens. And so when you provide two tokens, let's say ETH and USDT, you get some LP tokens back as like a receipt to prove that you added some tokens into the system in the beginning. But when someone swaps one of those assets for another using that DEX, there's now a different amount as a ratio of tokens in that DEX. So before there might have been 1 and 1, and then someone bought half of one of the tokens on that DEX. So now there's only half and 1.5 as a ratio. And that means that the value of your LP tokens underlying in the DEX is now different. And so when the price of a token in that DEX goes up, as a ratio, that pair changes, and it means that you actually lose the upside of that token going up because you get less of that token when you redeem your assets with those LP tokens.
Well, before we talk about like how you guys are able to kind of avoid that, even if a APY for one of the LP things is 200% or something, right? Is it still worth it to do it? Or do you guys think like doing the whole LP thing really isn't worth it in most cases?
It's definitely worth it in a lot of cases. I mean, there are some instances where a ridiculously high APY can still not be worth it, but Umbria still has a farm between ETH and Umbria, and I think it's like 150% APY, and some people are making some really nice gains. I mean, there's probably about $1 million staked in that. So at least a few people have thought this is a good deal for me. But one of the problems with DeFi and super high APY coins is that someone can release like a new shitcoin, and they can say, if you stake this coin in my farm, I'll give you a massive APY on this asset. But as they're giving you those tokens over time and you're accruing interest, the value of their token might be going to the floor. So at the end of the day, even if it's 1,000% APY, if you start with $1,000 and it ends up being worth $1, you're not actually making any money, even though the APY could be really high.
Yeah, and that's a classic kind of scam that you see in the DeFi sector right now. You'll get someone implementing, shit token X, and they'll say, if you provide shit token X and WETH as a pair in Uniswap, and then get those LP tokens out and put them in my farm, I'll give you, 1 billion shitcoin X a second, and you'll have all this shitcoin X, and right now it's worth $1 each, so you'll make all this money. But what you've done is you've locked up your WETH into Uniswap. They then dump all of their shitcoin X into Uniswap, steal all of your WETH, and then all you're left with is this shitcoin X, which is now worth nothing because the main developer has just dumped all of his into the system. And that's something that you see a lot, especially on PancakeSwap. And it's something that we saw with the Squid Game token a few days ago as well, where that went from being worth $1 to 0 in a second. And so when you do see some of these tokens that give 500% APY, or sometimes even more than that, just think to yourself, is this token going to be worth even close to what it's worth now in 6 months? And if it is, then it's worth investing in getting that APY. But if there's a chance that it's not, then I would say it's probably not worth investing in.
One of the best ways to know, or to have, be encouraged whether a project is good and is not going to do a rug pull, is whether their team are publicly available and you can know their names, you can find their LinkedIn. I would say that's probably the most important thing if you're thinking of investing into some kind of DeFi thing. Because there's so many DeFi projects out there where once you actually go and have a look at the team behind everything, there's no one there, there's no one to be seen. And you have to ask yourself why people who are creating these applications that require a lot of trust to be successful, why they would kind of hide in the shadows and not let you know who they really are.
So to further this conversation a little bit about Umbria, so you have the LP you have available, so like 100% APY, but you're also having this pool and earn. So how exactly does the pool and earn work, and how come there's like no impermanent loss, and it's just kind of, I think, like just paying for the gas fees to, put it into the pool and then take it out?
Yeah, the reason that there's no impermanent loss is because when you add an asset to our pool, you only have to add one asset at once. And so if you put one Ethereum into our pool and you want to take it out, you get one Ethereum back. Well, you probably get more than one Ethereum because you probably earn some fees as well, depending on how long you've kept it in the bridge, in the pool. And so unlike Uniswap or SushiSwap, where you have to put in two assets, you just have to put in one asset at once. And so let's say you put in Ethereum when Ethereum is $4,500, and then a few months down the line, it's $6,000. When you take it out, you're going to get the whole upside of that increase. Like if the Ethereum price goes down and then you want to take it out, then you'll lose money. So there's still the possibility of losing money if the underlying asset that you provided goes down in price. But there's no impermanent loss because once you put something in, you get out at least that same amount that you put in of that asset.
Now, the other thing that I've tried to do, and I've admittedly had some difficulty with it. I know that I've messaged you guys about it, and I'm curious if this is kind of more of like a Polygon thing or something. When I've tried to do the pooling from the Polygon side of things to get it to accept, I've struggled mightily with that. I've had issues, and I still haven't successfully been able to do that. So for anyone that's potentially running into that problem, is there some kind of way to make sure that the pool assets go through on the Matic side of things, or is this something that's just kind of a problem with Polygon?
Yeah, so one thing that Polygon has been really struggling with right now is
are you talking about the farm, or are you talking about the
talking about the pool and earn aspect on the bridge?
Yeah, so can you guys still hear me?
I can still hear you. I think Oski is lagging out though.
Okay. Yeah, so one of the problems with Polygon right now is their official RPC, which is what MetaMask uses to connect to their blockchain, hasn't been particularly reliable.
Barney, you can explain that if you like.
Yeah, okay. And so I would suggest if you go and look for another alternative RPC, not the official Polygon main RPC, and use MetaMask to connect with that one, you'll have a lot more success. And so we have a connect function on our website. I think it's umbria.network/connect. And from there, we list an alternative Polygon RPC that people can connect to on MetaMask. And that should be much more reliable than their official one, at least for now.
Okay, interesting. I am going to take a look and see how that works, because that's kind of cool. It's wild that you guys had the idea to kind of create this bridge. And like, I want to go back to that if I can. Like, at what point did you guys realize, hey, like this is needed? And then at what point did you realize, like, hey, we have the technical skills to be able to do that? Because I think it's crazy. Like, I really don't understand too much of like the development side of things, but realizing, hey, we need to do this. And I think like in a lot of cases, there's not really, teachers for certain stuff. It's about having like the wherewithal, because it is like a lot of new kind of people within the space for this. But how did you guys decide like, hey, we need to create this bridge, and how was like the development created?
Yeah. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Can you take this one?
Yeah, you get it. You take it.
So basically, what we did was we created a decentralized exchange on Polygon, and then we realized that a lot of people are having trouble getting their assets to Polygon to like participate in that DEX. And we had a look at the kind of current bridging solutions that were available, and we said, wow, they're really slow and they're really expensive, and there's really no reason for them to be that way. And so one of the kind of attitudes that a lot of projects have in the crypto space is if something is more decentralized, then it's better. And so a lot of these bridging projects that are also coming out with their own cross-chain bridges are trying to be as decentralized as possible at the expense of being really expensive and really slow, because they want to build their applications in a completely decentralized way, which means that all the computation has to happen on chain, which is really expensive and really slow. So what we thought was, well, at the end of the day, when it comes to bridging, people don't care if it's decentralized. They care if they can get their assets from here to here. And I don't think they really care how it happens, as long as it's cheap and it's fast and it's obviously secure. So what we said was, well, why don't we create a bridge that doesn't have all of these problems of, the validation of being on completely on chain? Why don't we extract all of those encumbrances from that kind of protocol, create our own protocol using the liquidity provision model that we came up with? And as a consequence as well, our community can not only bridge way cheaper and way faster, but they can also provide liquidity and earn APY. So I think we've killed two birds with one stone there. As far as like the community building side of it is improved, because normal bridges don't have any community incentive around them, whereas our bridge has a pool, but also it's a lot faster and a lot cheaper.
It's spicy. I love it. I think it's really cool. And I mean, like for you guys, you're looking at the Binance Smart Chain, but ultimately what's next for Umbria, and how do you kind of foresee things, a few years down the line? Because somebody in chat a few minutes ago, they were like, okay, so basically like buy Umbria. And it's like, well, I mean, maybe, but ultimately like what are you guys' use cases for the Umbria token? And then kind of like what your envisionment and development are for the next couple of years.
Yeah, so we have some pretty grandiose plans around Umbria and some really like exciting ideas of what could happen in the next 3 years. But for the next 1 year, we're just going to be adding as many tokens and as many chains as we can to the system, and making a really robust, fast, and easy to use, basically bridging interoperability machine that allows anyone to move any asset that they want anywhere in the kind of blockchain ecosystem, whether that be Solana, KuCoin Community Chain, any of these blockchains out in the metasphere. After we've done that and we have a really robust framework where people can easily move assets around, we can then implement something that can easily allow people to migrate their assets into one, not centralized, that's not the right word, but one main hub of a decentralized exchange where people can earn the highest APYs and have the highest liquidity with the least amount of slippage, because all of these chains are now connected and we can get people to move their assets into one central DEX that's going to have the most liquidity in it and the highest APYs, the most volume, and all that kind of thing. Because one thing that happened about 12 months ago is SushiSwap was invented. And the way that SushiSwap became so big so quickly is that they were able to get people to move their assets from Uniswap into SushiSwap easily by just pressing this one migrate button on the SushiSwap website. And that's amazing. And they got billions of dollars locked in just a few weeks because it was so easy to use. And the users of SushiSwap got extra Sushi token on top of the fees they were earning from having their tokens in Uniswap just for getting fees from people swapping. But what we can do with Umbria, once we have this massive bridging infrastructure, is we can go even one order of magnitude beyond migrating liquidity from one DEX to another. We can actually migrate liquidity from every DEX everywhere into one place. So it won't just be getting billions of dollars from Uniswap into Sushi. It'll be getting billions of dollars from Uniswap, billions of dollars from SushiSwap, billions of dollars from 1inch, and getting all of the other major DEXs. Everyone can migrate into one place that will have the most volume, the highest APYs, and the lowest slippage of any DEX. And so that's kind of like the main goal in 3 to 5 years. We're going to have the technology that no one else has to basically enable us to have all of the liquidity in one place and provide a order of magnitude better user experience for our users wanting to swap assets.
Another thing on top of that as well is that we've recently started moving into more of a DAO model. So in the beginning, when we had the bridge, liquidity providers would get a percentage, but also the Umbria team would get a percentage of the fees generated on the bridge. But we're not doing that anymore. It's only going to be liquidity providers of the asset and also people who are staking Umbria on the bridge. And so we're extracting that. It was 0.1% that was just going to go to the development team to fund development. And now it's more centered around the Umbria holders. And obviously the development team have their Umbria, so they do get paid in that way. But we thought it would be a more fair and a more community-focused way of kind of building this project up if we allowed people who are holding the Umbria token to get a portion of those fees. And the thing that is really exciting for me is because as we scale up and as we add more chains and more networks and ramp up the volume that's coming through our system, those Umbria holders are just going to get more and more fees accrued into their staking balances. And so something that we're really focusing on is kind of providing that value back to the adopters of our governance token and taking sort of DAO approach to this system. And so I'm really excited now because it's such early days. We only have one bridge between Ethereum and Polygon, but there's potentially like 15 different bridges that could be useful to people. So the sky's really the limit for those people who are staking Umbria. And you can see that over the last 3 to 4 months, as this bridge has been rolled out, there has been quite a lot of community interest in staking the token, and that's why the price is like 4x in just a few months.
That was a hell of a sales pitch, by the way. Like 10 out of 10. If you ever have like an elevator pitch or whatever, take that whole segment right there. You guys killed that. Holy shit. But JVB's asking, in terms of like what's at the top of your list for other chains that you're not currently working on, but you think you want to or wanting to develop. Obviously, you've mentioned Solana and whatnot. And I'm curious kind of like about Polkadot. Is there one that you see and you're like, yep, like we want to integrate that like ASAP as soon as we're done with Binance Smart Chain?
Solana for sure. Yeah, Solana is having a lot of interest with DeFi, and there's a lot of volume happening on Solana. So definitely Solana is in our sight. It's a little bit more complicated to integrate than, like, let's say Binance Smart Chain. It's not directly compatible with MetaMask, for example. So we'll have to figure out the best way to integrate whatever wallet people are using and to make that user experience really nice. But we've set up the framework here to add as many chains as we like, and so it's not going to be any great technical feat to start adding these other chains. So Solana is definitely top of the list, and Phantom and Avalanche are another two that we're really interested in.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about the way we've implemented this is it was a great technical challenge to get the first bridge up and running, and then it was a technical challenge to get Binance Smart Chain as a separate bridge then to be integrated into our system. But now adding other separate bridges, we already have the code that we've developed to add an extra chain onto our current infrastructure. And so really adding all of these other chains like Avalanche, Solana, Phantom, they're going to be quite easy to do now now that we've kind of already implemented the like skeleton code for adding these chains into our system. And so we think that we're going to actually be rolling these out pretty quickly once we've got Binance Smart Chain up and running and everything goes smoothly with that. And so I envision us to have in the next kind of 12 months or so, probably 8 to 10 bridges, of which will be just as we'll have just as much volume as the Ethereum Polygon bridge does have now.
It's cool. I'm excited for you guys. Like looking at all this stuff, and it's cool that originally, and kind of like what we alluded to before, of like how did you come to the idea of doing the bridge? And like I think you guys originally, the whole idea was creating that DEX, but you kind of like pivoted to go to something that was needed, and then ultimately still have that vision.
Yeah, exactly. So we still definitely plan to build out a really big DEX that's going to be super useful to people on Polygon, on Ethereum, and all of that. But we realized that until there's a good bridging solution to enable people to actually move their assets to a DEX that we have on Polygon, there's not really much use in us developing something really awesome there when nobody can use it. And so looking at our community and seeing what their problems have been, and then implementing solutions to solve those problems has really been like a successful way of going about with all this technology. So we're really happy with how it's all been going.
Now, with that said, is there anything that's coming up that's announcement-wise you guys are wanting to let everyone know about, or kind of just pay attention to the Binance Smart Chain? Because we'll wrap things up now, but I just want to kind of give you the floor if there's any kind of final things you want people to take away just a little extra.
Yeah, what I would say is that Binance Smart Chain is just around the corner. And if you do have Umbria and you want to stake it in the right place, we would definitely recommend staking it on the Ethereum side, because you're going to be earning all the fees that happen on the Ethereum side, but also on the Binance Smart Chain side. And if that unbalances the bridge in any way, we might split off that fee, half for Ethereum stakers and half for Polygon stakers. Depends on like the health of the bridge, but it's going to be starting out on Ethereum. So if you're interested in staking Umbria, I would say definitely stake it on the Ethereum side in anticipation for Binance Smart Chain when that comes out.
Yeah, and for anyone who's interested in the Umbria token, it is available on Uniswap V2. And anyone who is interested in using the bridge or might have any questions, we're always on Discord and available to chat there. So if anyone would like to discuss technicals or just learn a bit more about Umbria or the bridge, we're always looking to chat with people for sure.
All right, guys. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on here. Excited to kind of follow the journey and look at everything. And I'm moving some of my stuff from Matic over to the Ethereum network right now for that. But anyway, guys, enjoy the rest of your day and we'll chat soon.
Great.
All right, thank you very much
for having us.
All right, there we go. There's the lads, as we say. Yeah, that's cool. I think it was the fear of God kind of passed through me when they're like, yeah, everything in the NFT space right now is probably not that safe. And like the audits and everyone looking at all that kind of thing. Like, sheesh, it's crazy.